And I'm always really impressed with a couple of things. First is the parent and kid interaction during this day, which you'll get into in your small groups in a little bit, which is great. And then that's reinforced with the pledge later on. What's really impactful this year is that by the time that we're all over with Refuse to Choose registrations and things like that, there's going to be 500 people taking that pledge across southern Vermont, over 10 schools. And I think that's a really giant and impactful number, because I know that keeping up with the pledge is a really hard thing to do on some days. Some days it's easy, some days it's hard, but I want you to know that there's a lot of other people that are in this with you. And I want you to take that with you when you're having those moments of struggling and going, okay, there's other people doing this too, and they might be struggling, or they might need some support. So know that you are not alone. And the collaborative can't pull this off alone either. Oh, by the way, hi, I'm Maryann Morris. I'm the executive director of the collaborative. We don't pull this off alone either. We have the support of all of our 10 schools, 7 of which are represented here, or 8 of which are represented here. We have the support of the representatives from each of those schools, which help with this kickoff, help with planning these events, and pull off all of the 4 events that come after this. So thank you to the school representatives, everybody. Give a round of applause. Raise your hand if you're a school representative. I think there's some in the room. Good job. The kickoff itself has a planning team that is part of the representatives, that make up the representatives, and they meet throughout the summer to plan this event. So thank you to that planning team. Well done. Yay. Raise your hand if you're on the planning team. I see a few here. The collaborative has an amazing staff that works really hard to make sure that the Refuse to Use and other programs that we do are pulled off with integrity and with a lot of fun and zest. And that includes Chrissy Blaylock, our programs coordinator, Jackie Barella, Victoria Silsby, our AmeriCorps members, Laura and Taylor, and they're all somewhere in the crowd, so thank you guys. And we are, of course, guided by our board of directors, which is an amazing team of people, some of which are here today, either with their kids or without their kids, and that includes Irene Nadler, Melissa Brown, and Sandy Birch, so thank you all very much. Some of you are in the crowd. And then, of course, we couldn't do this Refuse to Use program without our partners, which include Stratton Mountain, Viking Nordic, Riley Rink, and the Dorset Theater Festival. So thank goodness we have those incentives. And additionally, there's just a ridiculous amount of support in the community for this program and programs like these, for the Refuse to Use program and programs that are about prevention and things that support our young people in the community. And those include business leaders and school leaders and law enforcement and emergency services. And they include people like our guest speaker, who's Erica Marthage is the state's attorney. I'm going to read you a little bit about what who she is in this community and to this community. Erica is the Bennington County State's attorney. She grew up in Manchester, and she attended Manchester Elementary School, just like many of you are right now, or many of you have. She also went to Burr and Burton Academy. Probably most of this room has gone to those 2 schools. Ms. Marthage graduated from the University of Vermont and the University of Connecticut School of Law. Ms. Marthage has worked in prosecution since 1998, becoming Vermont's first DUI forfeiture attorney under the state's new DUI forfeiture law. And she then joined the Bennington County State's Attorney's Office and was elected to the position of State's Attorney in 2006. And at that point, she was the only female State's Attorney in Vermont. Since becoming State's Attorney, why can't I say that today? Ms. Marthage has continued to break new ground. In 2010, she appeared in front of the U.S. Supreme Court and became the first state's attorney in Vermont history to win a case at the U.S. Supreme Court. She continues to handle the juvenile court caseload and works on policy and community reform related to juvenile and substance issues. We're happy to have Erica here today, a Manchester native, a Manchester resident with kids of her own in our community, to share with her experiences and insights. So welcome, Erica Marthage.
Okay, good afternoon. It is a beautiful day to be inside in a gym. But it is extremely important, and I'm really pleased that everyone has come out to support both the collaborative and the efforts to remain drug, alcohol, and tobacco-free, and to take the pledge. And I love, by the way, I just saw Bonnie over there, who is my math teacher, and I'll talk about math in a little while. So thank you for having me. I love to have the opportunity to talk to students about the importance of making good decisions regarding drug and alcohol. As mentioned, I'm the Bennington County State's Attorney. I prosecute all of the criminal offenses in this county. I consult with law enforcement about search warrants, arrests, and cases. And my office handles all of the criminal trials, the child protective matters, and makes all of the jail sentence recommendations in this county. So why would I love talking about good decision making? Because the criminal justice system is really the last-ditch effort to encourage good decisions. I am not going to spend a bunch of time about what my job entails and why I believe criminal justice is so important. My job really is to prevent people from breaking the law, punish them if they do, and give them the tools to make better decisions next time. If you all make good decisions, I will never see you in criminal court. However, since my office is very busy, there are a lot of people out there making poor choices. What can we learn from their experience? Well, one of the ways is to encourage responsible choices through positive reinforcement. The Refuse to Use program is an incentive-based program. It offers the benefit that mentioned by Maryann with season passes to those students who can remain drug, alcohol, and tobacco-free. But I'm going to be the downside of today's discussion, and I'm going to talk about the fact that it is important to focus on some of the things that we don't want to happen, negative consequences and disincentives. I want to make sure that everyone here is clear that many people really are under the mistaken belief that the courts are full of bad guys. They are not. I'm going to let you in on a secret. Most of the people I work with are good people who made poor choices. Many of them started out just like you. They played sports, they got good grades, they had lots of friends. Some continued with their good fortune and success even after making poor decisions. Many did not. The gamble that you're all faced with is that for everyone here, there is no one that can tell you whether you will be the person who ends up successful or not. Poor decisions put you at the risk of many negative consequences. I'm going to refer to those as disincentives. I've divided those into 4 categories. I'm going to talk about the ones that students mainly should be thinking about when they are faced with difficult decisions involving substance and tobacco. Before I get into how terrible and dark cloud all this is on this beautiful day, I did want to make sure that I mentioned that the collaborative provides many education-based resources. It's important that the collaborative address not only positive-based programs like the Refuse to Use program, but also what do we do when you do make a poor decision, and how can we use the information to make good choices in the future, and education is a huge part of that. I also wanted to make sure that I clarified another misconception that people have, and that is that parents of people that I work with, and I can name multiple people that have children in their 20s that are addicted to heroin, that cannot tell you the major event that led their child down the path of addiction. They usually talk about poor decisions, perhaps, that the child made as a minor. They talk about the fact that, well, maybe he was drinking on the weekends, maybe he attended parties, but I never saw him drunk. It really wasn't a problem. Maybe she smokes pot on the weekend with her friends, but what's the big deal? It's not heroin. I can't stress to you enough that I work in this community and I went to these schools, and I am shocked still almost every day at work by the things that happen in our community and involve substances in our youth. So the first section I wanted to address was students. Things that you should be thinking of that are disincentives to using drugs, alcohol, and tobacco. Loss of privileges. So things you may like to do, but things you may lose if you make a bad choice. Cars. This can be a parent taking away your car. It can be a friend's parent taking away their car for a poor choice they made so you won't be able to ride around on the weekend. And I just need to say again that I grew up here. I know the importance of vehicles. No one gets anywhere in this community without one. We don't have public transportation. We don't have taxi services on the street. We don't have subways. We don't have buses, and everyone lives miles apart. Not having a car on the weekend when you want to go to your friend's house stinks. If you don't have a car, but you have a friend with a car, it is in your interest to make sure your friend is making good choices so that they don't end up without a car. Let's not forget how terrible the weather in Vermont can be. It's cold and it's awful, and no one wants to walk 3 miles to their friend's house. And it's really not just about getting from one place to another. I also remember being here and how important just hanging around in cars is. Riding around in cars, going places in cars. Hanging around in cars is not in and of itself illegal. It's what you do while you're in the car that can create a problem. So a car provides independence to all of you students. A car provides independence. You can go to the movies, you can go to school, and you can go to sports. It's no fun standing outside of the movie theater at 17 years old waiting for your mom to pick you up. Trust me, I did it. It's no fun. Losing car privileges is not only up to your parents. Vermont law provides for tickets that result in license suspension, whether you're driving or not. So if you are ticketed for drinking, you can lose your privilege to drive, whether you were behind the wheel when you were stopped or not. If you make an unfortunate choice and you drink, you may get caught. And here's another area that I have to touch on because it still surprises me every time I hear it. No one ever thinks they're going to get caught. I have never had someone come into court and say, well, I knew the police were coming, but I drank anyway. The problem is no one can tell you whether you'll be the one to get caught. Maybe it's your first time drinking and the police unexpectedly show up. Maybe it's your 5th time drinking and your friend rats you out to save himself. There is no guarantee that any of these consequences will kick in or not. When you are faced with a choice about alcohol, drugs, or tobacco, it is a decision about whether to take the risk, and that's what I'm here to talk about. You can be denied attendance at school events. Teachers and parents can revoke your ability to go to school events. Games, dances, if they're still called that, plays, class trips, all of those are related to poor choices. If you make a poor choice as it relates to tobacco, alcohol, or drugs, you may not be able to attend events that all of your friends and teammates are attending. You may be disqualified from sports teams. Sports are also a major aspect of attending school in this community. I played 3 sports. I get it. If you're drinking, smoking, or doing drugs, your coach and your school are likely to penalize your participation, if not terminate it entirely. Bonnie was my field hockey coach, so she, if your school doesn't prevent it, your parents still may. So even if your school does not know about your poor choice, you still may have parents that tell you you can no longer play. There is a restriction on other extracurricular activities. Maybe you get grounded. Maybe you can't go to a friend's party. Maybe you can't spend the night at a friend's house. Parents are in control of the majority of your extracurricular freedom. As parents, I'll mention this a little later, their immediate and meaningful response is paramount. Restricting your freedom is one of the most effective consequences they have. Now, this is the more tangible piece of disincentive that some people are uncomfortable hearing about, but it's something that I think is effective for teenagers to hear. If you are under the influence of drugs or alcohol, you are more likely to engage in behaviors you would otherwise find repulsive. In other words, you're more likely to do things you would be embarrassed by if you were not under the influence of substances. And you don't need to be intoxicated. Impairment to the slightest degree decreases your inhibitions. Some of the possibilities and things that I have actually seen in my line of work: posting photos of yourself online, dancing, or in various shades or states of dress. Dancing. Now, dancing in and of itself is not a bad thing, but do you really think you have a better sense of rhythm when you're under the influence of alcohol? Driving under the influence, arguing with your friends, getting into physical fights, vandalizing property, or engaging in behavior that you would find completely mortifying if someone at school heard or knew about it. With the prevalence of cell phones and the internet, everyone is recording everything. Nothing remains within the confines of a single party. Social rejection and public humiliation are worse than ever. Engaging in risky and criminal behavior carries with it consequences that stretch far beyond one night. A whole other topic of conversation is the internet. Pictures and videos on the internet will last your lifetime. I interview people today that have been out of law school 5 years, and I can still find photos from their social pages from 6 or 7 years ago that prevent me from hiring them. This is a younger crowd, but I wanted to make sure I pointed out the risk of unprotected, unwanted sexual encounters is significantly higher for people that are under the influence of alcohol or drugs or are with people under the influence. Those type of consequences can last a lifetime, and the consequences cannot be undone. Now, here's the gross part. Loss of self-control also includes very real physical impacts that substances have on your body. Sweating, vomiting, urinating in your clothes, and a general appearance that is completely opposite of what you may have been trying to project is frequent. And again, I grew up here. I know that not much has changed and that everyone here likes to spend a bunch of time making sure they look nice and they smell nice and they're wearing the right clothes. Everyone here has a sense of vanity. But being intoxicated, looking disheveled, vomiting or urinating on yourself are certainly not the images you were going for when you left the house to go out that night. The police processing videos that I see are always shocking to the person who watches it, and they are never flattering. Now, from my perspective, obviously, a final disincentive I want to make sure students are aware of is the likelihood of criminal behavior and the involvement in the court system. It is not enjoyable to be in the court system as a defendant. The age of criminal culpability in this state is 10. Most people don't know that. You can be charged in juvenile court as young as 10. At 16, you can be charged in adult criminal court. The adults that are most familiar with you, the parents, teachers, and friends of yours, are not the ones in control of the process. Adults that see you in the context of a poor choice are the people that are in control. At the very least, you will need to disclose a very poor choice you made to a bunch of strangers. And even worse than that, you will have to talk about that poor choice with the people that had the most trust and faith in you. Community service, substance counseling, fines, those are all just pieces of the criminal justice system. The time you will need to spend being reminded of your poor decision is what drives many students to make good decisions in the future and not come back. Thus, adults that work with students frequently refer to these moments as teaching moments or teachable moments. And I love that phrase because they have a phrase for it now. When I, of course, was younger, they didn't have a phrase for it. I just knew that if I was hearing something like that from a teacher or a coach, that meant that I had made a poor decision, and we were going to be talking about maybe what that poor decision was and maybe how I could make better decisions in the future. So you could hear a pin drop. This is no fun, right? Like I'm talking about all this downer, no fun kind of stuff, and it's a beautiful sunny day out. But I really feel that I am in a uniquely positioned place to tell you all what I've seen and what I I know that we as a group can make a difference about. We can make better decisions and we can help our kids make better decisions, and you are all in this together, and having each other as a group makes that much easier. So now we did the disgusting part of my talk. I'm going to talk about the really scary part now, and this is for the parents. The number of student deaths I see in this county every year is startling. Car accidents and accidental overdoses are the prevalent causes of untimely death in the student population in this county. Serious motor vehicle crashes that result in significant injury are common. They are usually the result of the driver being under the influence of drugs or alcohol. Now, every parent and teacher worries. We worry about the everyday decisions our kids make. We worry that we want to make sure we can help them make their own decisions. And the use of alcohol and drugs is one of those areas where the potential of a poor decision can actually be death. So part of my job is I have the opportunity, but I also have the curse of being an individual that gets every phone call about every untimely death in this county. I receive a phone call for every car accident that involves death or drug overdose. And again, I have never had a parent say, I knew this was coming. It's always startling, it's unexpected, and it's heartbreaking. Many of these families will never recover. I go into the prom and graduation season every year with a sense of dread. When will the phone call about the crash come, and will I know the family? Now, I asked if I should go have specifics about this, and I have general specifics. Things that I've actually seen in the last 8 years since I've been state's attorney. The mother who lost both of her teenage sons in one motor vehicle accident, the teenager who was left on the front lawn of his house by his friends after a night of drinking and the father found him dead in the morning, the 16-year-old boy who was killed while a passenger in a vehicle. The driver had been drinking. The boy asked him in front of a number of witnesses if he was too impaired to drive, to which he answered no. During the fatal drive, while 3 passengers were pleading with him to stop the vehicle, he was driving too fast, he had too much confidence in his ability, and he was impaired, although he was not impaired as you would expect. The front seat passenger was killed. The back seat passenger lost half of her leg. The 2 back seat passengers testified at his sentencing. Their testimony about the last few moments in the car and hearing their friends' pleas was disturbing on a whole new level. He received 7 to 12 years in jail. He had no record. His parents are still living in the community with the parents of the boy their son killed and the girl missing half of her leg. The single car accidents where a lone driver dies and is just too innumerable to even mention in this community. Over the last 15 years that I've been the state's attorney, or been involved in the state's attorney's office, there have been multiple accidental overdoses in the Northshire alone. And they are not heroin or cocaine. They are frequently a mix of prescription drugs and alcohol, and they are from various backgrounds. And I never have anybody say, we saw this coming. So frankly, there are just too many cases like this. Every time one happens in the community, the adults are shocked. My goal is to make sure you understand how common these outcomes are and how dire the consequences can be. We cannot prevent every accident from happening, but we can individually and as a community make a difference and assist our youth with making good decisions. So are these scare tactics? Yes, they are, because this is very scary stuff. It's very scary. The role you play is so important when it comes to good decisions about alcohol and drugs. Now, more minor concerns for a parent would be an increase in criminal behavior by your child. The situation where your child, it's more likely your child will be the victim of a crime if they are involved in either using or being with people that are using substances. The trauma of many of these cases are lifelong, and they have an impact on the student and the family. very minor in respect to all of those, would be school performance, a decrease in athletic performance, behavioral problems, mental health crises, and financial liability, including increased insurance premiums. Those are just a few of the things that adults need to keep in mind when they think about how important good decision-making with respect to substances is. Now, the third part that I wanted to just briefly touch on are the impacts to the community. So all of those things listed above are impacts on the community. But you also, just as a community member, have an increased risk of being involved in a motor vehicle accident because if impaired drivers are on the road. There is an increased likelihood you will be the victim of a crime. Like just recently, the woman in my neighborhood who had an intoxicated young man walk into her house in the middle of the night. She fled her home, tried to get in her car, which had been vomited in because the defendant had tried to take her car. He was arrested and is facing felony charges. But I have to say, the stress and fear of being in your home in the middle of the night and having someone walk in is palpable. There's also an increased risk of property damage due to the increased likelihood of criminal activity, like groups of kids that are drinking in someone's home, perhaps using drugs and vandalizing and otherwise destroying the property of the home. That is irreparable harm to both the community and the families involved. So now that I've thoroughly depressed you all about those things, let's talk about what we can do. What can we do to make this an easier decision and an easier process? What is the role of the adults? Parents, teachers, and community members are all part of this. It's not just if you're here today. This is a message you should be out delivering to the people that you know and the people that you spend time with. You should be modeling good behavior. Adults making responsible choices when it comes to drugs and alcohol is the best way to model good behavior. Use alcohol in moderation and only use drugs as prescribed. Now, for adults, responsible modeling does not necessarily mean complete abstinence from alcohol, but it does mean not drinking to the point of intoxication, not drinking with clockwork regularity, and certainly not driving after drinking. Alcohol is a legal substance for people that are 21 and over. It is our responsibility to show youth how they can make good choices and how we can model good choices. It is far more important than what we're telling them. This is something recently I've noticed that just gets under my skin on a whole other level, and that's the trivialization of drinking and using drugs. A lot of TV shows joke about it. It's on a lot of social networking pages. Even joking about getting drunk or using drugs is the wrong message. Adults posting photos of overindulgence on your social networking pages is both juvenile and poor modeling. What message do you think you're sending to your kids? Now, I notice there's a clause in the Refuse to Use pledge that you'll be taking that students are agreeing they will not make any claims of illegal substance in any printed material, public speech, or internet site. Again, you should practice what you preach as an adult. You should be doing the same thing. Another way adults can help this problem and help students understand how to make good decisions, if you make a poor choice as an adult, take responsibility. If you have a drug or alcohol problem, get help. I can tell you, I grew up as the child of an alcoholic parent. Kids know when their parents have an alcohol problem or are addicted in some other way. Now again, responsible choices does not always mean abstinence. It's a life choice, and some people will choose to be abstinent. Adults need to show how they take responsibility for their mistakes. I had a great conversation with a teenager, and this is why I continue to do juvenile court, because I get to have some interaction with the teen population. I had an interesting conversation with a teenage girl a couple of weeks ago, and she had this perspective where adults don't have to make these same stressful decisions every day, that they don't have, that somehow this all just goes away when you turn 18 or you turn 21. Every day, the adults sitting here in this room are making choices. You're making choices based on consequences. You're suffering consequences for poor decisions, and you have incentives for good decisions. I don't know one parent here today that says, I am so thrilled I get to get up every day and go to work and then give the majority of my money to people to pay for my household bills. I recall being a 16-year-old with a job, and I would get my check and go spend the whole check on sneakers and food and movies and whatever it is. And to be able to do that now, to even be able to spend a small percentage, it's a consequence. We're all making choices. We know we need to put food on the table and we need roofs over our head. Students need to understand that life is decision making. We're all making decisions and we're all taking consequences for our decisions. We're all held to the same standard. I need to make sure that parents understand they cannot enable the poor choices that their children make. When your child or student makes a poor choice, you need to hold them accountable in meaningful ways. This includes all of the incentives named above: curtailing extracurricular activities, restricting the use of a motor vehicle, not letting them ride in a car with friends, or suspending participation in athletic events. This is a learning process. It is not something that is ever going to be perfect. Everyone here in this room, adults included, have made decisions, probably at least one poor decision in the past year. But you need to be able to think about, what are the consequences I suffered because of that? Is it worth it to do it again? And what tools can I have so that I don't make that decision again? This is a learning process for the teachers and the parents included. As students here, they think we know everything. I've heard, my kids are still little, I've heard that as they get to be a little older, teenagers, they don't think we know anything. But it still is our job to make them know that we are learning and that we are a part of this process. We need to educate kids about the dangers and offer support when they mess up. Consequences are only one small piece of the puzzle. It is important for us to provide meaningful consequences, but to communicate those with both love and guidance and in the most effective way. Now, so how can we as a group of adults effectively aid good decisions? I like to think about this example with, and this was not chosen for you, Bonnie, but a math student. The teacher is explaining a process of how to solve an equation. It's both a mixture of demonstration and strategy. If the student does poorly on the test, the consequence is a less than stellar grade. How the teacher will work with the student to determine how they can get a better grade in the future. Did he study enough? Did he do his homework? Does he need a different approach to learning or looking at this problem? The teacher will continue to help the student and will offer support through the process. No one will say that it's all the teacher's fault and that he just shouldn't have to take the test and he shouldn't have to suffer the consequence of a poor grade. I want to wrap up by saying that I have the opportunity to see a lot of families, and I get to see how those families deal with poor decisions in their family and how the consequences work. How they are dealing with poor decisions speaks volumes about their approach to enabling bad choices. I regularly have parents call my office to complain to me about how the police gave their child a ticket for underage drinking. But then I also see the parents that just bring their child to the diversion program, they complete the educational component, and they move on. The programs that provide consequences for poor choices exist because there have been hundreds and hundreds of hours put into determining what is the best way to educate kids. These programs and the police do not exist just to annoy and harass your child. Parents frequently are mad when they come to court, but it's not because I understand, they're not mad at me and they're not mad at the police. They're angry because they're in this situation. We all love our kids and we're all concerned with their future. Being suspended from school or sports or having to go through diversion for a ticket may seem like at the time it's going to ruin their future. Missing an important game may be extremely discouraging, and you may think that that's going to have some impact for the rest of their life. What I can tell you from experience is that poor choices related to drugs, alcohol, and tobacco definitely will ruin their future. It's not a risk. It's definitely going to ruin their future. As a parent, you have an obligation to not take the easy road. It's tough. I hate coming home at night and knowing that I have to impose some kind of discipline or consequence on my child that I haven't seen all day. I don't like it, but it's my responsibility. So you as parents and teachers have the opportunity to guide your students into adulthood making good choices. Not making them take responsibility for poor choices is not helping them. The best you can hope for as a parent is to have a child that grows up to be someone who makes good choices in all aspects of their life. They're a responsible member of society, and they visit their parents all the time. You cannot expect this to happen by itself. Learning is a responsibility process. So the thing I want to leave, well, I just want to touch on one thing quickly. I want to be mindful of the 30-minute time limit, but another way that I see parents every year, at least once a year, enable alcohol consumption is by having a party. They have the kids at their house and think, well, I'd rather have them at my house because then at least I know where they are. What I would point out to you is, one, it's illegal. There are no exceptions. It doesn't matter if it's their graduation. It doesn't matter. It's illegal. You will be charged with a crime and you will be convicted of a crime. It sends a terrible message. It sends an awful message to kids. And lastly, a lot of the complaints that come in are from the other kids' parents who are really angry that a parent made the choice to have their child at someone's home. So that would be my last downer thing to say. I would just say that as a parent, you need to be able to trust your children to make good choices, and the only way to get there is through hard work and practice and mistakes and overcoming those mistakes. So I have one final thought for each group of people that are here. To the parents, teachers, and the caring adults that are in this auditorium, students care what we think. They spend an awful lot of time trying to tell us they don't, but the worst thing we can do is believe them. They do care what we think. They do not want to disappoint the adults in their life, whether it be a respected teacher, a well-liked coach, a parent's friend, or their own parents. So think about that when you're convinced that everything you're doing is absolutely for naught. And students, when you are faced with a difficult decision regarding substances, you need to ask yourself, what would my grandmother, my beloved coach, or my favorite teacher think when they hear about my poor choice? Because they will. This one simple test can guide you in all of your decision making. I just want to thank you all for having me, and I want to wish everyone good luck in all of your endeavors this school year. Thank you.
I help coordinate the Refuse to Choose program. And for those of you who are in the audience right now, I really want to give you a round of applause and kudos for being here and for making the decision to be here, whether it's just for the past or being able to take an hour and a half and sit down and be with your student and have a conversation and make it last beyond this afternoon, and hopefully it continue on through the course of winter to summer, and hopefully as your child progresses into the next school year and beyond that. I feel that part of Refuse to Use, the big thing I feel for families is communication. And I hope that Refuse to Use, being a part of the program, deciding to opt out after you are here, or however long down the road, that it sparks a conversation at the dinner table, in the car on the way home, or next week, or whenever the next time you actually get to have a one-on-one conversation with your student. I just want to give you a round of applause and say thank you for being here and for being able to be a part of the program.
All right, that's great. We only have a couple of other things to do, and I would say also that one of my favorite things is that this doesn't end here, that these conversations happen in the car, at your dinner table, on the trail, on the ski lift, whatever you like to do as a family, keep those conversations going. That's a part of the intent of this program, is to spark those types of conversations. You are, a couple of housekeeping things. You are not fully registered unless you've gone online, have registered, given a photo that is appropriate, and paid the registration fee. So check out our website, thecollaborative.us, or follow the link that you may have been emailed in any of the announcements for this event. Also on our website is a calendar for future events. It is your responsibility to look and see when those events are, figure out if you can make them or if you can't, and contact your representative if there's a problem so that there can be a makeup event. Questions, you can call your representative or the collaborative. And did I forget anything else? No. So final thoughts, and our pledge is going to be done this year by Burton teacher and coach and Refuse to Use representative, Paul Bremel. Thanks.
So final thoughts. That's better. You know, we listened to Ms. Marthage tell us about her reality of young people that she has to see who have made some poor choices. Realize that the adults in this room, the adults from Stratton, the adults from the Dorset Theatre Festival, from Riley Rink, and from the Viking Nordic Center, believe in the students that are taking the pledge today. They believe that you're going to make the right choices. They believe that you guys are worth investing in. I don't know if anybody's looked, but this pass is like $900. Multiply that by the number of students in here that Stratton believes in you to that dollar amount is outstanding. Your representatives are volunteering their time because we believe in you guys. We want to help you make the right decisions because we already think you will, but we know that maybe over your shoulder is somebody saying, no, come over to the dark side. And we're going to say, you know what, if we can provide you enough information to say, I don't think so, you will make the right choice. I want you to know that the adults in the room are here for you because we have faith in you guys. We believe in you, and we want you to keep making the right decisions. We want you to influence your friends and help them make good decisions so that you never have to appear in court in front of Ms. Marthage. I'm pretty sure I don't want to be there. So that said, make sure, I just want to go over one more time that you attend your events. If you cannot attend your event, make sure you contact the rep from another event that you can attend. Look at that schedule. Think about things ahead of time, okay? I have students here that plan things about 12 minutes before they actually need to happen. You need to plan a little bit better than that, okay? Because you can attend an event at another location or with another grade level if you can't make yours, but you have to plan that ahead of time. So please make sure you're taking that into consideration, okay? So, parents, thank you for being here. I'm going to ask everybody to take the pledge, and I'm going to ask you to respond to what the pledge is. It is printed in this little handout right here, okay? And so if I could get our, I want them to stand right. If I could get everybody to stand up so we can take this pledge, okay? Caring adults, take a look at the people that you're here to care for, okay? And let me remind you that hey folks, let me remind you that while these might look like just words printed on a page, you're going to speak them and make them your own. And you will own this pledge. This is your word that you are giving to each other and to yourself. Parents, will you support your student in their choice to be and remain substance-free? Please state, I will. Will you notify the school representative or the collaborative if your student is unable to honor their pledge and uses alcohol, tobacco, or other drugs, and therefore violates their pledge, knowing that this will mean termination of your student's pass and that we will be provided resource referrals. Please state "I will" if you agree. Will you provide or assist with your students' transportation to the scheduled substance abuse prevention education events? Please state "I will." Will you support your student by attending kickoff event and dialogue night in January? Please state "I will." In the event of a family scheduling conflict, will you notify the Refuse to Use representative at your student's school and attempt to make alternate arrangements? Please state. Students, it's your turn. Remember again, students, these are your words. This is your pledge. Students, will you refuse to use alcohol, tobacco, and any other drugs? Will you not misuse any over-the-counter or prescription drugs? Please state "I will." Will you support your friends in their choice to refuse to use alcohol, tobacco, and other drugs? Will you behave respectfully and responsibly at RTU events and while using your pass? Will you not make any claims of illegal substance use in any printed material, public, speech, and/or internet site, Facebook, Snapchat, Instagram, etc.? Will you attend at least 5 of these scheduled substance use prevention education programs sponsored by your school? By joining the RTU program, you understand that you voluntarily give your word and that you will honor this pledge and you will follow the guidelines. Please state "I do" if you agree. Do you understand that if you cannot uphold this pledge, that your pass will be terminated? I do. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for refusing to use. See you at the next one.